Hi everybody, this video is going to be a little bit of a recap from English 111, but also it's going to show the expectations for this class in English 112 and also for other academic writing that you may be doing. So to start, on this first slide, I included a little diagram of the different things that you need to consider when you get an assignment that involves writing. First of all, you want to consider who your audience is. And most of the time we just say it's a general academic audience, but also, particularly in this class, you're writing from the standpoint of a career or college major, so you may consider that people who read it would be interested in the same things, or they might be part of the same industry. But above all, you're writing for an academic audience, and you need to have formal phrasing and formal intent with your information. I always tell students, no matter what class they're in with me, and also my own children who I raised, have purpose with everything you do. And one of the things that I think a lot of students forget with assignments in college is it's not about the grade. Yes, the grade is the outcome. That's what shows you that you did well or you didn't do well. But your purpose in doing an assignment is not for the grade. The purpose is for you to learn something, for you to experience something new. Your job is to get that experience and then be able to translate that into your future career or into your future work environment or how you are in your community. Having an education gives you a lot of skill sets that make you successful in other areas. So knowing your purpose and understanding your purpose with doing any action, whether it's walking into a store or making dinner or writing a paper for a college classroom, it's important to know your purpose. What outcome do you want from that? And I promise you, it is never the grade. You think it's the grade, but it's not. If you would put some of that aside and not worry about the grade, then you would put purpose into it, and then you're going to get a grade that's great anyway because you've put a lot of good energy into creating something that's proper and well crafted. So just like when I cook dinner, yes, I want to eat, but I want it to taste good and I want it to be of some quality and I want it to be pleasing to the people who eat it. So the people who eat it are my audience, and I want all of those things to sort of come together. You are the writer, so obviously I don't have to explain that. When you're a writer of academic documents, you need to use formal tone. You need to have a certain way about the way you approach it. We're going to talk about that in this video. Also, the good thing about English 112 is you already know what your topic is. You've sort of been doing some preliminary research up to this point, and so you already sort of know the space that you're in with that topic. But in some other classes, they may just say, hey, write an essay about a war or write an essay about a community. In that case, you have to narrow the topic and you have to make that topic have purpose, and that goes back to the purpose. So all of these things kind of work together. And then I also put context. You need to keep it in the context of the topic and what your purpose in writing is. All right, so the first slide, which, there we go, is about the writing process. You probably talked a lot about this in English 111. Different instructors show it differently. When I teach it, I actually show the writing process and I try to teach them the proper steps to follow when they write. So one of the things I want you to break for a bad habit would be writing at the last minute. If a paper is due at 11:59 at night, you should never be starting it at 9 o'clock at night. Some of you may think, hey, if I started it at 9 o'clock, I'm ahead of the game. You're not. If an instructor gives you a week or 2 weeks to work on a project, they've given you that time because they want you to use the proper process, and they want you to do it in sections and shifts. You should never do anything in one sitting. You're not going to have a good outcome. It's going to be sloppy. If you turn in something that you write the same night it's due, you're giving me, at best, a draft. Most of you give me a pre-writing because you haven't even edited it. So that's a frustration from instructors, and I just want to be really honest with you. There's an expectation with college writing that you've been mature enough and you've spent the time to work through it properly. So college level writing takes a lot of steps and a lot of effort. Professional writing, academic writing, all the people who write for a living, including me, we have process with that, and we have certain patterns we follow, but the one thing we don't do is write it at the last minute. So you have some resources you can use. So Smart Thinking is embedded in the Blackboard courses at JCC. I have it in the Resources tab, and then it's also under Course Tools, so you can find it any course you're in, and it has tutoring and writing help there. And they actually have tutors who will review your work and send you back notes to help you edit it. But they have a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. So if you decide to send something to them the morning something's due, you're not going to probably get it back that same day. You need to give them at least 24 hours. Sometimes if it's during a busy time of the semester, like end of semester or midterm, you may have to wait up to 48 hours to get it back. That's the beauty of having the process. You need to start it as soon as someone assigns an assignment to you, start the process. Grammarly is an app that you can download with a smartphone, or you can download it into your computer. It's awesome. Many of us use it. I use it. I love Grammarly. If you use Chrome, it's an extension, and then it would be an app with a smartphone or maybe another browser that you use. Also, in this class, we will be using peer reviews. We don't use them for every assignment, but we do use them for some assignments. If we don't have a peer review, I would suggest maybe have someone in your house read through it just to catch small mistakes that you may have made. So a quick review, pre-writing, is what you just do to get the ideas flowing. You might brainstorm, you might make some lists, you might do some webbing or doing the bubbles for your ideas. Then you're just going to start writing a draft. That first draft you write is not going to probably be the one that you end up with, but it's where you put your ideas into sentences. You sort of plan it out, you organize it, and you start a first draft. And then you probably revise that draft, but then you rewrite it. So a lot of students will say, how many papers do you expect me to write? And I would say an A paper is probably written at least 5 times, if not more. That doesn't mean you're starting over every time. It just means you're taking parts and you're rewriting those to make them stronger. You're not going to get an A if you show me the first thing you write. That's going to be a draft, and it's not going to be okay. You want to proofread your papers, and you can use Grammarly for that. You can send things through Smart Thinking or, like I said, the peer review process. And then finally it says publish or share. Really, you're sharing it with me at the end, and then I grade it. You're going to turn it into Blackboard. So next, this is a big problem with academic writing. For most academic formal writing, you're going to use third person. There are 3 levels of point of view: first person, second person, and third person. For formal writing, you need to just use third person. It needs to be away from your opinion. You don't need to insert yourself into an academic paper. There are a few exceptions. Sometimes, and even I might do this, you're asked to do reflections on your writing or on your process of research. And then sometimes in a creative situation, like maybe in 111 you may have done it, you may have written a narrative or a story or something that you use first person because the story happened to you. For most academic writing, third person would be she, he, it, they, them, their, or theirs. One thing that you never do in academic writing is to use you, Y-O-U, and that's this one right here in the middle. In the English language, you does not have a formal. In other languages like Spanish or French, it does have a formal side to it, but we don't. So when you use you, you're being informal. So you should save that for people you know, people you're texting or emailing, or family members that you're talking to directly. So if I see you in any paper you write, you automatically lose 10 points with me. And if you repeatedly do it, you're going to get lower and lower grades. It's just not acceptable, and it's a habit that you have to break. Okay, here's a review of the pronouns, and hopefully you'll keep, you can rewatch this if you need help. But first person is just I, me, we, us. Second person is you, and you should never use it in any formal documents. Third person is what you want to stick with, and that's the she, he, it, or they, them. A lot of times also you use the actual noun or the actual name of something, the title of something, and so leave out the first and the second person pronouns. All right, diction is important. So I kind of gave a fun little scale here. So you have formal diction, and that's what you should be using in this class. And then you have casual diction, and that's probably something you might use with acquaintances or maybe in class discussions. You would have more of a casual tone. And then very informal, that would be something you just use with a bunch of friends who know you best, and you can be very, very casual, and maybe you even use your own slang with your friends, but that should never enter into a formal paper for a college level class. So diction refers to speaking and writing and your choice of words or phrasing. And for academic writing, use formal words and phrasing, and leave out things like stuff and things, words that have no real meaning. And also leave out cliches, phrasing that's just overused. Tone is important as well. So it's not necessarily what someone says or writes, but how they say or write it. So tone can be sort of the undertone of what you're writing. And sometimes you're writing for, like, if it was an opinion paper, you might want to bring in a certain tone to get attention. But a lot of times for just a regular academic essay or document, your tone is going to be very academic and formal and even-keeled. You're not going to have a lot of sarcasm or comedy in there. It just doesn't have a place with academic work. So tone is a written work with the attitude. What kind of attitude is in the writing? It can be shown through choice of words or how you phrase or how you include information in your paper. A couple tones that you could consider would be formal, informal, serious, comic, sarcastic, sad, cheerful, all sorts of tones. When you look at research, look to see what the tone is with that research. And sometimes if the tone does not match what you're looking for, especially with something we use in English 112 is argumentative writing and argumentative research, persuasive research. You want to make sure the tone is appropriate for what is being written about, the topic, the subject matter. So tone is often important, and it's underrated. Sometimes people forget to kind of reference what the tone is being used. And the best way I know how to explain tone is a lot of, like, I know my kids always say, "You yelled at me." I really didn't yell. I just had a very serious tone that they probably didn't want to hear. And so think about that. You know, when you write, sometimes those tones can come in and bring something, an element into your writing that you may not intend to have. Okay, how to properly structure a paragraph. I would hope that after 111 you should be able to do this, but we're going to review it here. So one way to look at it is like a hamburger or a sandwich. The top bun is your topic sentence, and it sort of sets the pace. It sets the size and the scope of the paragraph. And then the middle, the kind of meat of the sandwich, all the things that go into it, that's the evidence and the data and the proof to prove that main idea. And then what holds it all together is that kind of final sentence, the concluding sentence, the thing that wraps up the paragraph. So that's a quick little overview using a hamburger. There's later on, as we get to the proposal, I'll probably talk to you about the Oreo lesson. Sometimes if we were seated in class together, I would bring Oreos for students to eat while we talked about this as reminders of how to support a thesis or how to support a topic sentence with a main idea. So in the body of an essay, a paragraph has to do all these things. We talk about purpose. Your paragraph has to have purpose. So whether you're writing a discussion board post or response, an assignment response, or an essay, you have to properly structure a paragraph. One of the things I saw in the preliminary writing, a lot of people put one sentence answers. That's not going to cut it for a college level class. You need to almost do a paragraph per response. It can be a shorter paragraph, but it needs to have the structure. Set it up with the topic sentence, have a main reason, main purpose with the main idea. Then you're going to prove that point that you promised that you were going to prove with the main idea with all the evidence and data and reasons of why something is true. And then you're going to have sort of an explanation at the end to wrap it all up. Start with the topic sentence with the main idea every time, then support it, explain everything, and then wrap it up. I also put this peeling paragraphs apart, an acronym. You want to make your point, you want to give evidence, then you want to explain that evidence. Never just leave it up to me as the reader, especially not me as the instructor, because I'm looking for your evidence and your explanation of it. And then you want to link it together. So it's not enough to just put one sentence ever. You need to always put it, combine it and shape it so that it has purpose and it has meaning for how you're answering something. And then, like I said, within an essay, you're also doing this with the body paragraphs. Here's just a very simple structure of an essay. Depending on what kind of essay you're writing, the structure can change somewhat. So I know when we do the proposal that's coming up at sort of at the end of our session this summer, the structure of your essay will have some more components to it because there's some things that would be required for the proposal. But I'm just sort of giving you a basic essay here. And if you sort of follow these guidelines, you'll be good for most essays you write in college. I did show you this one because it has the upside down triangle and then the uprighted triangle at the end. You want to go from broad to specific in an introduction. You want to start off with an attention grabber. I know in high school they call it the hook, but one of the problems I have with calling it a hook is a lot of high school instructors, part of the curriculum is to have you guys write questions. I don't want to see any questions in your writing. If you're having to question me as the reader or the instructor about your topic, then we have a problem. I want to see statements and I want to see surefire directive writing, like you direct it to something. If you're constantly asking your reader questions, then it hurts your credibility because it looks like you don't have the answers if you're constantly asking them questions. So do not start off an essay with me, particularly with a question. I am not a fan of them. I'm going to ding you on it. Now, you may have other instructors who like it, but I do not. And I come from a background of writing. I come from a background of academic writing, and so I'm trying to steer you in the proper direction. Then you're going to have your body paragraphs. This kind of is structured like a 5-paragraph essay, but in college level work, we don't count paragraphs. I know in high school sometimes you're directed to do a 5-paragraph essay, but we don't care about the number. We care more about the content. One of the things I tell students, the easiest hack, sometimes I watch Snapchat sometimes and they have the life hacks. So the life hack for writing an essay is if you've already written the introduction, pretty much your conclusion is already written. You just have to turn it upside down. And so a good life hack for this is you would start your conclusion with a restated thesis, because your thesis should always be that last sentence in your essay. And then you want to kind of broaden it out a little bit and transition to a broader point. And then you sort of want to end with a good, strong final statement to give your reader something to take away, something to think about. Again, no questions, a statement from you. What do you want them to walk away with that one statement that will make them really think about it further? So I put some things in here. Begin with an intention grabber, include transitional sentences, because you don't want to just have 2 sentences in your introduction. So start with an attention grabber, transition a little bit, have maybe 2 or 3 sentences in there, and then finish with a thesis. Sometimes we'll call it a claim in this class because we're doing argumentative writing most of the time, and we're looking at persuasive writing. So sometimes you'll hear me reference it as a claim because you're claiming something to be true. When we do the proposal essay, we'll also talk about that some people might call it a proposition statement, but a thesis, a claim, or a proposition statement all do the same job. It's showing the reader in one sentence. So if I ask you for a thesis or a claim or a proposition statement, you give me one sentence, and that wraps everything up in a concise manner into one sentence to show what the purpose of the essay is, what the controlling idea of the essay is. Your body paragraphs, you're going to start off each body paragraph with a topic sentence with a main idea. In the previous slide, we talked about how to structure a paragraph. Each and every paragraph in your body of your essay needs to have a topic sentence with a main idea. You have to show your reader what the purpose of that paragraph is, and also how does it tie in, what is it proving about that thesis. So each body paragraph usually has sort of a job to do to prove something or to support something about that thesis. As you move from one body paragraph to another in an essay, you want to transition, and please don't use transition words like however, therefore. That doesn't really do the job. You need phrasing. So in addition to this being true, this is also true. While this is true, this is different. Or however, but you want to phrase it so you're transitioning. Think of it like a conversation. You're giving something, you're guiding your reader through the thought process. And never drop in a quote. Always set up your point, then give evidence, and then explain it. If you have not explained it, I'm not working for Scooby-Doo. Like, I'm not trying to figure out a big mystery here. You have to supply that to me, and you have to explain it in your words. When you conclude, restate the thesis statement or the claim or the proposition. Include some transitional sentences as you broaden out the idea, and then finish with a final thought, and then your essay is written. So some of you who may like math, this is sort of a formula, and if you follow this formula, it works. My husband recently, in the last year, has been working on his MBA, which is a master's degree in business, and when he first started working on that, he had so many papers to write, and he basically has a paper a week, and when I say paper, it's about 20 pages a week. And I taught him this formula. He's a math guy. He's a science guy. And he uses it, and now he doesn't need much of my help because he's just sort of following the formula like you might follow a formula in math. So think of it like that. Okay, quoting and citing. So you have to quote with research, and we're doing a lot of research in this class, but you must clearly document the source and the ideas. If they're not your words, and someone else researched this and published the information, you have to give them credit. You can't just steal the ideas. That's thievery. You can't do it. Some students mistakenly think that citing something is optional, or, hey, well, everybody knows that's true. So the example I always give is we all know George Washington was the first president of the United States. But if you are writing something in a history class about a battle that he led, or something about his home life, or something about his philosophy about government, or whatever it was, you would have to cite that, and you would have to cite it from a history scholar or a historical document, because that wouldn't be common knowledge. So you have to be careful with that. Most things aren't common knowledge, so you have to cite it from the original source, and you can't steal it. If you put information into an essay and you have not properly cited it, then you are plagiarizing, and that results in a 0 on your paper, and I have to report it to the Student Affairs Office. So we have student services, and they have a whole system of reviewing plagiarism. I don't like to do that, but it's just, just like if there's a speed sign out there and you're driving in your car, you can't go over the speed limit. You might get caught and you get a ticket. So some students mistakenly believe that a citation is optional and that they can just write and write and write, and they don't have to put any in-text citations in there. If you're not sure about in-text citations, I would say look it up in your Seagull handbook. There are loads of things in there. There's a whole section, and I've got mine right here. I'll show it to you. I've even tabbed mine off. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got some little tabs. And even me, I do this all the time. This is what I do for a profession. But I tabbed off the APA section because I know that's something I use for this class. And I would suggest you can do that with like a little Post-it note or a little piece of paper that you tape there. And then you can review all the rules for citing and citing things. So if you use an idea but you don't do a direct quote, you still have to use an in-text citation to show where it originated, and that has to tie to your references sheet. With MLA, we call it a works cited sheet, and in APA, we call it a references sheet. But all of that has to tie in together to show where the information started. Here's another little sandwich. I'm just all sort of sandwiches in this presentation, but you want to introduce the idea, and then you want to come in with the quote or the fact, and then you want to explain it. And you have to use this 3-tier system every time you use a fact or a data point within your writing. So a lot of people just want to drop in a quote. You can't do that. You have to set it up. You have to insert the quote or the piece of information that you're using, and then you have to explain it and sort of apply it to your thesis statement. Okay, here's some reminders for citing and quoting. So always put the information taken from a source word for word in quotation marks. If it's not in quotation marks, beginning and end, it's plagiarism. And then you also need to have the in-text citation to link it to your references page. You need to provide proper in-text citations, whether it's MLA or APA, but we use APA in this class. Include the page and paragraph numbers, because you have to sort of direct the reviewer as to where it originated. If there are no page numbers, you can use paragraph numbers, but I always say if there are 100 paragraphs, I'm not going to count down to the 99th paragraph, so just use your best judgment for that. But if it's a shorter document, you can use the paragraph numbers. Put quotes of more than 40 words in the block formatting, and again, you can find that in the Seagull handbook to see how to exactly format that. Never follow a quote with another quote, so you can't stack quotes. As I said in the previous slide, you need to introduce it, give the fact or the data point, and then you need to explain it. And then if you have another quote, you would do the same order with that. Don't drop in quotes. Students do this all the time. If you drop in a quote and you have not added phrasing to it, it doesn't count. I don't need a bunch of dropped in quotes in your paper. I need you to apply it to the purpose of your writing. So dropped in quotes, or some people call them quote bombs, it's when you just throw in a quote but you don't have any phrasing with it. So a quote can never stand alone in a sentence. It can't be its own sentence. You have to have phrasing that you've provided to integrate it into the essay. And don't use too many long quotes. A lot of students think they're just wowing the instructor with that, and they're not, because I want to see your writing. I want to see your perspective, not your opinion, but you have to apply the meaning to it in accordance with your thesis statement. All right, here's just another little acronym, ICE. Introduce, cite, and explain. And that's that sort of three-tiered idea of how to include your information. All right, use of pictures, numbers, and bullets in college essays. This really does all depend on the course you're taking, what you're writing, and who your instructor is. Me as an instructor, for the purpose of this class, I don't want any pictures, numbers, or bullet points. I want to see fully written sentences, because this is a writing class. This is an English class. You can't take a lot of shortcuts in an English class. And so you may be in other classes. So I mentioned my husband was in an MBA program. They like that because it's a different setting. It's a different purpose with what he's writing. So sometimes he will include graphs because he has to do a lot of math with some of his classes as he's doing budgets for businesses and things like that. So they want the images of the math that he's done. They want bullet points. Don't start a sentence with a numeral. If you have it as part of what you're trying to say, you have to spell out that numeral if it's the first word of the sentence. And if it's a number in something you're writing, if it's under 10, you have to spell it out. If it's over 10, you can actually use the number. Usually using bullet points in a formal essay is just not something that's done. But again, as you move on with your writing, go by the assignment, go by what you're being asked to do, and follow those guidelines. But for me, for this class, for English 112, I don't want to see any pictures, bullets, or numbers in your papers. Okay, finally, I have some resources here that might help you if you just don't feel really confident with your writing, or if you just feel like you need a little bit of help. So Grammarly, I've already mentioned, and I sort of linked you here. The OWL, the Purdue OWL, is linked a few times in our course, and you may already be familiar with it, but Purdue University has this online writing lab, and it is updated constantly, and it's monitored by people in the English profession, and it's a great resource. It's kind of a live, ever-changing style book. So, for instance, we're in the, the third edition. They've already updated APA. I'm going to be giving you a link this week to the 7th edition, and then we're just going to kind of hybrid use it. But I know that the OWL has the updated 7th edition, but they just haven't come out with a new printed edition for the 7th APA updates. The Khan Academy is a great tutoring source for any class you're in. Most of their things are free, and I put a little link here if you need some help with writing. I also put Smart Thinking. I can't put a link there because it's already linked in the Blackboard course and it's tied to Blackboard. So if you just go to the Resources tab in our Blackboard course, you can link to that. And then I linked you to a couple places with JCC. I'm not sure this summer if we have the Academic Skills Center up and running. I know they were running in the spring, but since all of the USEC courses are online, I'm not sure if we have tutors available. I need to double check that for you, but you can also check by calling the number that this links to. And then I linked you to a LibGuide for all academic resources through the library that you can use. And don't forget that we have Nathan Stansel, who is our liaison librarian, and he can help you with research. He's not really there to help you with writing, but he can help you with your research. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope this helped you. I really wanted to, I know it's a little long, but I wanted to go through all the expectations I have and some of the pitfalls that I see students go through as they write and things that can take off points when they write. So if you have any questions, let me know, and hopefully this helped you along the way.